Walt Disney World and the Walt Disney Company have had a terrible last month, and it all culminated late last week when Governor Ron DeSantis signed Florida legislation, Senate Bill 4C, into effect, which basically stripped the Reedy Creek Improvement District of its autonomous municipal powers, a very special subsection of Florida state law that, frankly, nobody else in Florida gets to enjoy. Well, since then, there have been quite a few rumors and myths that have been swirling out there about what the consequences of this newly passed legislation would be. And frankly, I'm getting sick of reading them in my comments and seeing them on Twitter from the, frankly, uneducated masses out there. Thinking that Disney is going to move away from Florida, or that the Florida residents are now going to be saddled with a great deal of excess taxes to pay off the debt service on Disney's bonds. All this kind of nonsense, all this kind of stuff that really needs to be addressed. If you watch this video all the way through to the end, I promise you, you will be more educated than most folks out there. You will be able to address these people out there in social media and even from the mainstream media that have been lying to you in so many regards about what the consequences of this legislation getting passed is. Stay tuned. We're about to get in this with Legal Mindset. Here we go. Online. Well, welcome back, folks. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there. If you're like one of the many folks watching this video that are not yet subscribed, please go ahead and do the usual stuff. Subscribe button, notification bell, share this sucker out on social medias, and do leave a comment on this video. I have a feeling we're going to get a lot of good comments on this video because we are going to answer a lot of questions. And I have brought in a new YouTube buddy of mine. Welcome aboard, Mr. Andrew Esquire of The Legal Mindset. I know probably some viewers out there have seen you lurking about on YouTube. You've got a great channel. I know you like to hang out with other good YouTubers like Nick Reedy and these guys. And That's probably where a lot of people know you from. So we got you here because you have a unique perspective on this whole Disney Reedy Creek, Florida issue that's going on right now. Not only are you an attorney, you're an attorney in Florida, and you're an attorney in Florida that has spent many years specializing in special districts and bonds.
Yes. So
tell the audience.
Ironically, there's about 10 of us, and I know all of their names that have specialized in municipal bonds, that have dealt with special districts. There are very few people in the state of Florida that have represented more special districts than I have. I've represented about 30 different special districts and communities, some of which you, people who know Disney, will have heard of. So communities like Celebration. Yes, I represented Celebration. I also represented Bonnet Creek, the Bonnet Creek district, which is distinct from Disney, which is not part of Disney, but in fact, its own special district established under Chapter 190 of the Florida statutes. And it assesses bonds. It takes care of infrastructure. It does all the things that Reedy Creek wants to do, but it does them in a way in which they're regulated under the Florida Constitution, under the Florida statutes, not some weird special act like the Reedy Creek Improvement District. So that's what I did for 6 years. Also, my other life, just so people know, I also have served as corporate counsel for many large corporations similar to Disney. I also at one point represented Universal Studios. So I've represented a lot of other large entities in the neighborhood of theme parks, in the neighborhood of Central Florida development. So this is spot on an issue that is squarely within my expertise.
Well, this is great. And like I said, I thought this was a perfect meeting. And I want to thank Mags out there, one of our viewers and friends from YouTube that kind of introduced us on Twitter. And I think this will be great because I don't know if there's probably anybody that's more qualified to talk about this and go through some of these incredible and in some cases freaking hilarious myths and things that I've seen, especially comments in the last few videos I've done. I thought maybe a good place to start would be to, if you want to maybe give the audience a brief overview of the Reedy Creek District, and I've read some of its charter. It's 60 or 70 pages. In fact, I think I left a link to it in the last video that I did. This was a very, very different animal than all these other special districts from what I was reading. And I think you mentioned this was formed prior to the Florida state constitution. Tell people a little bit how this was formed and what it is, what makes it different.
Yeah, so there's many ways you can form a special district, several different parts of Florida law, chapters, we're going to call them, which are different areas of Florida law you can form a special district under. The key two, which I'll just have you keep in mind because I'm going to say them over and over again, are Chapter 189, which allows you to form independent special districts just in general. Often these are for mosquito control, flood control, all sorts of sort of public infrastructure maintenance. And then Chapter 190, which are community development districts, which are another very unique to Florida and very developer friendly, a private entity friendly type of special district. Now, a special district, think of it like a city or town, but critically without police powers. There's no cops that belong to the special district. They typically have to contract. So with Celebration, for example, they contract with Osceola County to provide additional policing to Celebration. That's something that they do specifically. So think of it like a city or town that has almost all of the powers, almost, of a city or town. One important element of special districts is they can create tax-free bonds. So these bonds they create are not taxable. Why is that important? Well, if a corporation takes out a loan, a bond in order to finance something, they have to pay for that. There are taxes on that. That costs them a lot of money. But if they can form a special purpose entity, a special district, and have these tax-free bonds, they can sell these to underwriters with no cost, reap this money, and spend it on what they deem, and there are lawyers that give it a very broad expanse of what that is, as public infrastructure. So think roads, bridges, stormwater ponds, a place like the whole lake in Magic Kingdom. That whole lake is essentially what constitutes a large stormwater pond. So that fully can be considered a public thing. Now, here's where RCID is an aberration, where it's different, where it's an animal that in Florida is completely unique. It was created by a special act of legislature. Disney, way back in the day, paid people, they paid legislators in order to get a special act issued, giving them pretty much carte blanche power, carte blanche immunity, far beyond what other special districts under the later passed 189 and 190 can do. The most famous one, the one I talk about all the time, is the ability to construct a nuclear reactor. They can build a nuclear reactor under their special act of legislature, and nobody else can do that. That's insane. They would never approve of that. But because of Epcot, because it was going to be this magical thing, this unique thing, because Florida was undeveloped, because it was a bunch of orange groves and cattle, they allowed this to happen. They allowed this to pass. It's the power of money back in the day on those legislators. Another thing they did was they exempted them from all oversight of the city and county. So whether it's Kissimmee, whether it's Orange County, Osceola County, every single municipality, no matter where it is in Florida, they cannot exercise any jurisdiction over anything within. So Magic Kingdom, Epcot, there's no zoning standard. There's no zoning approvals. There's no safety regulations. There's no impact fees. Impact fees are fees that are paid because of the impact of those of that area on the neighboring and that development on the neighboring infrastructure. So, for example, all of those people driving to DisneyWorld, they get there on state roads. They get there on county roads. They get there using county infrastructure. Well, guess what? Disney does not pay a cent, a red cent. They don't pay anything for the maintenance of that other infrastructure, which supports Disney itself. Don't pay anything. That's huge. That's unique. Universal doesn't have the same treatment. SeaWorld doesn't have the same treatment. No other theme park in Central Florida has the same treatment. And in fact, when I was representing Universal, one of the things we were interested in exploring was, is it possible to get us a Reedy Creek? Is it possible to have us form a district like that? Well, the answer is no. There was no political will in the 2020s, early 2000s to form a district like that, because a lot of people, even then, thought it shouldn't have existed in the first place. This is something we never should have allowed. The fact that this has been banned, this was really just a convenient time to get rid of something that, frankly, should never have been allowed in the first place. I hope that sums up a little bit of the background.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And that's what a lot of people have been discussing. And I think what a lot of people don't really seem to grasp yet is that, as I've been trying to remind people, this effectively what Disney has constitutes an incredibly unfair business advantage over its peer group. As you mentioned, Universal that you were legal counsel for, SeaWorld, I even threw in Busch Gardens, all these places out there. As you said, I mean, like Disney is effectively at this point is not having to, pay its way like everybody else is, and it's become a thing. But what has struck me is going back and looking at the history, of course. And I had this conversation with WDW Pro from that Park Place earlier, and he always talked about how initially one of the ways they were able to cajole this, as you brought up, like Epcot, that's what they were supposed to build. Walt wanted to build the city of tomorrow, the futuristic city. It was supposed to be a city. It was not just a theme park, but also actual residences, other businesses, things like this, building out.
Yep.
And of course, after he passed away, the people that then controlled Disney at that point decided, well, we've already got the district. I mean, what if we just don't do that part and we just keep building theme parks? And I'm guessing that's probably over the years where things went off the rail. But until recently, there just wasn't enough political willpower to really push the button until, certain factions at Disney basically bullied the board into a corner and forced the CEO, Bob Chapek, to make a hostage video and basically just come out and act like, well, we're gonna challenge the will of the Florida voters on this one. What? Yeah. And I obviously they stepped in it.
Yeah.
This is where we are now. And people think, well, this is going to be a problem because the Florida government used its power to punish a company exercising its free speech. This is a 14th Amendment violation and all this kind of stuff. And I think to myself, there's a problem with that.
Here's the thing. Here's the huge thing. Here's the huge problem with that. The huge problem with that is that in order not just to establish, not just for the bond's sake, which is a whole separate thing, but the whole principle this is based on is that this is a separate entity, that just like a corporation is separate from the individual, right?
Exactly.
It's like, for example, an individual, let's say Valiant, you have a corporation, Valiant Renegade LLC, right? And you're operating that, that's your business entity. And for tax purposes, you say, no, this is for tax purposes, it's separate. This gives me a huge tax advantage, right? It's the Valiant tax bonus from having your LLC. But then again, you go to the IRS, and when they try to come after you and they disband your LLC for some reason, let's say you're non-compliant on the taxes, you say, this damages me personally. Well, the whole point is that it's distinct. The whole point is that this is a distinct entity. Just like a corporation is supposed to be distinct from the individual, right? Reedy Creek is supposed to be a public entity that focuses on public infrastructure and is separate and distinct from Disney's private interests. If they were to go and assert that could actually invalidate their bonds. It's in and of itself could have people challenging the bonds and say, hey, wait, these are invalid bonds now. Because these bonds are not for a public purpose. They still have to be for a public purpose. They're for a private purpose that benefits a corporation. So they're gonna have to try to argue. If they're gonna go First Amendment, they're arguing on both hands, and that's gonna work real badly for them in any circumstance.
That's what I've been trying to tell people is that they're forgetting. It's like, we're saying this hurts Disney, and yes, in a roundabout way it does. But at the end of the day, we're talking about, it's not Disney that's getting decertified here. It's Reedy Creek. And Reedy Creek is supposed to not be Disney. So the only person that can challenge this is Reedy Creek.
Disney does not have standing. Disney
does not have standing. They can't take it to court. So Reedy Creek would have to argue that, we went and fought against the parental rights and education bill, and we stood up for this, and we said we're going to work to get it repealed. They didn't. Disney did that. This is Reedy Creek. Reedy Creek's something totally different. They got nothing. So let's talk about the bonds, because this is another. I get, we've had this discussion. I've been working in the financial world for 20 years, and I've never been on the issue side. You have been on the bond issue side. You have advised on a great many bonds.
Yes.
In Florida, as a matter of fact. I think, what did you tell me about $2.6 billion worth of bonds in Florida?
In aggregate, right? So we're talking about dozens of community districts having dozens of issues, some of which are like Disney had, actually their most recent issue. And by the way, everybody, this is an issue for everybody, a resource for everybody. You can go on what's called EMMA, which is the municipals, essentially it's a municipals listing, a listable search website on Emma, and look up the bond issuances. And I looked up that, hey, the very latest issue, 2020, that's a ad valorem refunding bond. So essentially, initially, there'll be an issuance, and their issuances were from decades ago. But eventually, they'll say, hey, rates are good. In fact, rates are very good right now for bonds, especially compared to 20, 30 years ago. So let's refinance these bonds, or let's reissue them because maybe we need an additional capital. We have additional projects we're using. So let's reissue them, get a little bit of extra juice out them, and extend the maturity. So their latest issue was in 2020. But all of these were bonds that were put out on specifically Reedy Creek property. And under Florida law, when you need, and this is very important because everyone asks about the bonds, what about the bonds? When you issue bonds in Florida, regardless of whether it's Reedy Creek, whether it's anybody else, there is case law that says they need to be specifically applied unless they're general obligation bonds, which these are not. And general obligation bonds in Florida also require separate procedures, a vote, a referendum that you have to go through, separate procedure. These are revenue bonds on specific ad valorem revenue. You have to put out a description. You have to say, where are they assessed? What do they apply to? And when you look at those bonds, they were assessed only on Reedy Creek property, right? Only on Reedy Creek property. So that tax can only apply under Florida law to Reedy Creek property. If they attempt in any way, shape, or form, to get these bonds extended out to the county at large, they will be thrown out in 2 seconds in a court in Florida as essentially unenforceable bonds. It's an unenforceable lien on your property. Imagine somebody imagine someone had a mortgage on the house next to you, right? And all of a sudden they default and they extended that to the whole street. So now everyone's got to pay their mortgage. You would challenge that. You'd say, no, I was not on notice. I'm not there. Well, there's nothing recorded against my property. It's almost the same thing. Of course, that's way oversimplifying it, not even close, but you have to be on notice. You have to have notice. You have to have a hearing. Now, of course, the county can try to extend that, but it wouldn't fly in court because there's no benefit outside of Reedy Creek. The benefit is specifically to Reedy Creek. Now, one thing I'll point out, and I said this in my videos on my channel, is the act itself that disbands Reedy Creek contains a provision saying that a new special district under Chapter 189 can be formed the day of the dissolution. It takes 2 weeks to form a special district. Ask me how I know. 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks to form one.
I have a feeling you might have done this.
You could do it in an afternoon. You pay me yes, I have. And it's like, the paperwork is so simple. It's literally, give me the name, give me the description, tell me what powers you want. And they already know all that stuff. They have all the information. They can file that with Orange County today, have it on the docket, have it go through. It has to go through a first and second reading. That takes 2 weeks. The first week is the first reading. Second reading is the time when it goes into action. That's the second week. You can have that done way in advance of July, which is when this thing is set to expire and kind of roll over. So they can have their special districts set up and have all of that go, all of those bonds, everything else taken care of by the new Reedy Creek district, which is just the same as the old one in terms of area, except for it's now compliant with the Florida Constitution and modern Florida law.
Right, which the old one was not written under. And that's the big difference. And let me ask you this. So for everybody's clarity,
yes.
Yeah, big difference. Let me ask you this. So everybody's very clear on this, as you just mentioned, because I really want to get this through people's heads that do not seem to, at least some of them out there, just do not seem to get this. Reedy Creek is the only area that can be held responsible for the service of this bond debt. Correct?
Yes, correct. Very clear. Reedy Creek, the boundaries of Reedy Creek are the only thing under Florida law that can be held liable for that bond debt. Any attempt to expand that is going to be thrown out.
And who owns all of the properties inside Reedy Creek?
Disney entities. Now, I say entities because it's not one entity. They got several entities, right? So let me be very clear.
And Buena Vista, right?
Bay Lake, Buena Vista, and for example, like Disney Parks is different than others. So, and obviously, any of the land that belongs to Reedy Creek, you could argue that that's going to be transferred over to whatever government entity, whether that's a new special district or whether that's the county, whatever. So essentially, the private property within Reedy Creek will be the ones liable for it. The only ones liable for it, which is Disney.
I was going to say, so in other words, at the end of the day, the person that is still going to be directly or indirectly responsible for servicing that $2 billion of bond debt or whatever's left on it at this point
Right.
would it ultimately be the Walt Disney Company.
Yes, ultimately, yes.
There we go. That's it.
It's the end of the day.
Yeah.
There's no way this is coming on the taxpayers. I used to live in Lake Eola downtown in Orlando. If you've ever had a chance to check out that area, we have downtown a special tax that applies just to downtown folks. So downtown property the tax applies to downtown. Many people in many cities around the United States have taxes that apply downtown because there's special services you get downtown. You might get those colorful lights around Christmas in July. You get the flags. You get the extra trash cleanup, from all the parties and everything else that's going on. You have those extra amenities. You're taxed more. When you receive a higher benefit, you have to pay more. And when there's a lot of stuff that's different, that's when a special district comes in. Disney is primed up for a special district. The only problem is they need one that's compliant. They need one that has to conform to modern standards. There's filing standards. There's financial standards that we've created in Florida that they are not following as they should be, right? There's disclosures, there's planning, there's reporting to local governments where you have to file reports to the cities, the counties to give them certain reports every single year. They're not doing those. Every other special district is required to do these things, is required to follow these procedures. We need to bring them in compliance with everybody else, bring them into compliance with the very type of entities that they're familiar with, like Celebration. They were, through the Celebration Company, the entity that formed Celebration, which is a code compliant, a statutorily compliant special district under 190. Disney is damn well familiar with what it takes to form a special district. They're very familiar with this. They are attempting to gaslight people by misrepresenting what it is, how hard it is, and what's going to happen to that bond debt. They know very, very well what will happen to it.
Let's assume for a second that they are not able to recertify. What then happens? Can Orange and Osceola counties then come in? Could they levy new taxes on the Disney property? Would Bay Lake and Lake Buena? I mean, what would change in that case? And then the second part of that would be if they do petition for certification under the Florida state constitution. What would change with the new district? What would they lose compared to what they have now? Would they also be subject to additional taxation of some type that they're not paying now? What would be the changes both ways?
There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to. Let me make it very, very clear, right? Special districts have been formed by all sorts of entities and all sorts of places. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to create a special district. The only reason why they wouldn't be able to create one is if Orange County said no. And Orange County would be pretty insane to say no to Disney on this. It would be very, very odd for Orange County to say no to Disney on this one. So let me say that would be weird. In fact, county for just arbitrarily denying their petition. The other thing they could do if Orange County wanted to be really sneaks on it is they could there's independent special districts which have their own government, in this case allowing Disney to govern by the 45 people in double wide trailers who live within their district and allowing to use them as voters and allowing them to use them as a district. That's an independent district. You allow them to govern themselves. However, they could create what's called a dependent special district. So that's one that's controlled by the actual board of the county. So the county would sit as the board of the new Reedy Creek Dependent Special District, and they can assess taxes on the area within the Dependent Special District. So you see where this is going? It would only apply to Disney. It would be taxed on Disney, and the board itself, i.e. the County Commission of Orange County, would sit in charge of Disney infrastructure. Now, they would absolutely seethe at that. Disney, they are such control freaks. They are so drunk on their own power. There's a reason why in Central Florida we call them the rat, not the mouse, because in the development world, they do not bargain at all, and they will absolutely cut you out of the deal. So I think that would be objectionable to them, but they could do it. But they could have a dependent special district, have a tax that applies just to those people. It's what's called a special assessment. It will go on the property roll, but you can also, especially originally, you can also, this is used for a lot of new districts. You can send the bill directly to the property owner. So it's called direct billing. So they can send Disney the bill and say, hey, Disney, here's the bill, pay it. and it's Disney infrastructure. Disney has all the incentive to pay it. They have no reason not to pay it. It's the roads that lead to the rat Rome. I mean, you've got to pay those costs. You've got to pay into that. So they will indeed pay for that. However, I think the big thing that RCID has going, which just leads to the fact that they are going to get recertified and they are going to be able to create their own district and run it, is they have so much infrastructure. They have their own building, they have their own trucks, they have their own stuff. So because they have so much invested in terms of equipment, manpower, et cetera, they've almost got to recreate a district here, whether it's a dependent or independent district. That's regardless. They've got to create something, because that infrastructure really does have to be taken over by another government entity that's specifically applying it to Disney property, because there's a specific benefit associated with that property. I think that kind of answers the question there. I mean, I think there's also other taxing districts you can have, regardless of whether there's a special district. You can also have a tax on an area, like I said, like a downtown, like any other sort of area that has a special benefit. You can just apply a tax and say, hey, we're applying a tax to this area, an assessment to this area. And yeah, maybe it's too late for it to go on the roll this year, but they can get it on for 2023, and they can come up with a way to fund it until then. There's ways they can do that. You can always.
Okay. So the counties themselves could, if Disney reforms as a new district under the newer Florida law, okay, if they reform in that manner, then these two counties that they physically occupy pieces of, they would be able to assess special taxes in there if they so chose. They would be able to, well, let me say this. Would Disney then have to, as it stands right now, my understanding is Disney basically doesn't have to seek approval to even build anything. Nuclear power plant or an ice cream stand and everything in between. Would Disney what would change in that regard if Disney does get its special district back, or get a version under current Florida constitutional law, the new provisions, and basically play on the same playing field as everybody else? What changes with Disney's permitting and regulatory environment?
They'd have to play by the same rules as the other theme parks in Orlando. Their plans would be a little bit more public, because they're going to have to go through public use, zoning, all those hearings that you hear about, that when Universal goes, for example, to its zoning hearings and does its land use, that's public. You got the new news. You got people hearing about the fact that I was involved in the project where they're thinking about the new theme park, right? And that information for Universal, and that was leaked way before they ever would break ground, because we've got to go seek these approvals. We've got to go change the land use designations. We've got to go and seek planning approval if we're going to build over a certain height. Disney would have to do that. Now, I guarantee you Disney is going to get all the approvals they need from Osceola County, from Orange County, but they're going to have to go get the approvals, and they're going to have to pay the fees. They're going to have to pay employees at Orange County and Osceola County, who are salaried employees who are working regardless of whether Disney exists or not, right, to go out there and to go tick those boxes. They're going to have to pay it like every other citizen in Orange and Osceola County. And guess what? Orange and Osceola County will be better off for it, because they build a whole lot of stuff in the House of Mouse, and they're going to need to go get all those approvals like everybody else, and pay towards those people's salaries. So in a way, they're subsidizing more of what's going on anyways. It's really going to only, in that case, only benefit those who live in Orange and Osceola County, as they'll be contributing towards those administrative costs.
Yeah, and potentially Disney actually paying more of a tax, of a tax in those two counties to support those counties that they're not necessarily otherwise really paying now.
Yes.
So, well, very good.
They pay nothing. They pay nothing in terms of taxes, impact fees, other things, to specifically the counties of Orange and Osceola County. And look, they need those funds. I mean, Orange and Osceola County, they definitely can use those funds. Osceola County, much more rural than Orange County, but definitely rapidly developing. And one thing that's hurting in Osceola County, I can tell you this as somebody who's worked with Osceola County, they need infrastructure, and they need it fast. And to be able to use Disney funds to pay for infrastructure would be a massive benefit to Osceola County.
Are they receiving any tax revenues or fee revenue now on things like, hotel and resort fees or taxes they put on that? I know, being from New Orleans, we're famous for additional taxes on hotels and stuff like that in the city of New Orleans. Does Osceola and Orange enjoy anything like that from Disney resorts or Disney properties or sales taxes, anything coming in like that?
So there's still sales tax, because sales tax is at a state level, right? So Disney cannot preempt the state, right? Because the state created the entity. It's always, when you think about powers of government, you think, okay, highest level, state. Okay, the state created Reedy Creek, which is on parity with almost a county at this point with the level of powers they've given it. Not just the city. I would not even compare Reedy Creek to a city. I'd compare it to a county in the level of powers that it has, because it's immune to most of those charges. As far as I'm aware, and I check on this one because, once again, I didn't directly represent Disney, but as far as I'm aware, there is no additional sales tax in Reedy Creek in Disney specifically, right? So there's no specific sales tax above and beyond what the state threshold is. Also, I do not think they have a higher amount for the occupancy tax or anything else. Whereas if you know, the county decides, hey, we want to up those rates, we want to up the sales tax specifically within Disney, they will now be able to do that. That is now going to be something that's within their ambit, whereas they could not do that earlier. So once again, these sorts of taxes and revenues that could be generated from Disney, that Disney was previously immune from, no more immunity, which, by the way, unheard of.
And that's whether they recertify or not.
Florida, not a thing.
That's whether they recertify or not. Okay.
Whether they recertify or not.
Okay, yeah. Because
if they're disbanded, if Reedy Creek is disbanded, if this goes through, right? Because some people have said, oh, they're gonna backtrack, right? So some people have said, oh, well, the legislators may backtrack, they may come back and change their mind, they may renege on this, they may drop the bill, right? So okay, yeah, theoretically, if they nullified the bill before it went into effect, right, then Reedy Creek would stay in operation. But for that, all of these things are possible whether they recertify or not.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and I was curious about the sales tax only because, and I don't know specifically how it works in Florida. I know here in Louisiana, each county, what we call it a parish, each parish has their own layer. So that the state sales tax is X is 5. I think it's about 5%, and then each parish assesses their own parish, sales tax in addition to that, which might be another 4 or 5%. We actually have one of the worst sales taxes in the country here.
So yeah. we can do that, Valiant. We can do that, but here's the thing about Florida: we're competitive and we're free market oriented.
Right.
So we understand that if Orange County understands. Look, think about it this way, Valiant. If Orange County is assessing increase it by 10%, or whatever, 5% or 4%, whatever. And so it's 11% in Orange County, and it's versus 7% as the state. Osceola County can come in and say, we're not doing anything. And boom, they've got people coming to Osceola County. They're driving business to Osceola County because all they got to do is cross that county line that's right there and buy their products and drive right back. So because they're trying to remain competitive, they try to keep that sales tax super low. Frankly, most counties that do it in Florida, they do it under a percent. So we're talking half of a percent, a fraction of a percent, a quarter of a percent.
Yeah, Florida's definitely more competitive than most. I know, and I know I've been suspecting for some time. And last year, the news came out last year with Disney trying to move 2,000 mid and upper level management jobs out of Burbank and into Florida. Basically, anything that wasn't tied down to a movie studio was going to go to Florida. And I kept thinking to myself, it's not going to happen overnight, but eventually I think Disney was looking to basically remove their incorporation in California and reset up corporate domicile in Florida, which would make every ounce of financial sense on God's green earth to get out of California and put it in Florida. Just not having a state and city sale or income tax alone would save between Disney and its employees billions. I mean, it would be ridiculous. But I hope, I don't know what they're going to do now because they've really stuck their foot in their mouth.
Well, but here's the thing, Valiant. They've already started moving it. They've already started building out the infrastructure in Lake Nona. Lake Nona, by the way, which the area that they're going to move a lot of these employees to, that is a special district as well. Spoiler alert, I represented 2 that were out in the Lake Nona area, not the actual Lake Nona one itself, but that's a special district as well because that's held to a higher standard than the county standard.
But it's not a Disney-owned special district.
No. It's not Disney owned at all. It's not Disney owned at all. It's owned by the property developer.
Yeah.
Not Disney owned, right? Lake Nona, not Disney owned. It's out. It's in a new development in Orlando. It's very nice, very swanky, nice tennis courts, nice restaurants, nice hotels, all the stuff that a bougie Californians would want. They can get there and like Nona. It is could not be built out better for bougie Californians. But that is controlled by the people who live there, by the people who work there, by the people who are stakeholders. So they're the ones who are going to end up assessing because they want to maintain that. Anytime you see that anywhere in Florida where you see your standard of living, it is probably either a HOA that is maintaining it to a higher standard or a special district.
Yeah, and again, just getting on an even playing field, dealing with the way that we all deal with life, or like any other business deals with business. That Disney's, like we said, they have to play by the same rules as everybody else in Florida. That's it. That's all this boils down to. It's not punitive from that standpoint. And again, it's not even really Disney. It's Reedy Creek, which it's Disney, but it's not supposed to be Disney. So, so I think it's going to be interesting to see what Disney's response to this, which to date, I have not, to my knowledge, seen anything. I think their response has been crickets for the most part. I think it seems like they're staying pretty silent. I don't know if you've heard anything further on that.
Well, here's the thing, Valiant. They're working through their simps and through their shills, right? So Disney is operating through the people that normally will come out and stand for them. And you can see who it is. The people that are speaking up, the representatives that are speaking up, the representatives that are talking out, the reporters that are reporting on it, the stations that are reporting on it. They're people that receive insane funding from Disney. And mind you, a lot of people, I'm not across the whole Central Florida plain, a lot of people receive Disney money. So once again, they're going to go out there and they're going to whine, they're going to cry, they're going to make statements, but you've got to notice they're not doing it as Walt Disney Company for a specific reason, because if they do that, that will defeat the argument that Reedy Creek is a separate entity and that it's needed, that it's something that provides its public purpose. So it's a very unique situation in which Disney really can't make a statement, because if they make a statement, it may damn them. It's really a lovely situation. I couldn't wish this on a worse company than the Walt Disney Company.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I hope everybody out there watching has gotten a lot of good information out of this. And I want to thank Legal Mindset. I want to thank Andrew for being here. Make sure everybody goes and checks out Legal Mindset on YouTube. Thanks for watching, folks. And hopefully at this point you have a much better understanding of all of this relationship between what's going on with Disney and the state of Florida. Please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on social medias, and of course, leave a comment before you head out the door today. We want to hear from you, and we will try to answer as many of the comments as we possibly can. Until next time, take care.